A streaming amplifier doesn't have to be a second choice. You save on space, cables and remotes, but not necessarily on sound quality. B.audio promises that their Alpha 1 offers that. This is the first product from the French B.audio I review. Their product range consists of 6 models: a DAC, an identical looking streaming DAC, a DAC with integrated preamplifier, an identical looking streaming DAC with integrated preamplifier, a power amplifier, and the Alpha 1 on review here, a streaming DAC with integrated preamplifier and power amplifier. You could say that the B.audio has a number of modules that they can combine: a DAC module, a streaming module with server functionality, a preamplifier module, and a power amplifier module. The Alpha 1 reviewed here contains all 4 modules, so this review can be seen as a review of all modules, provided that the power supplies are sized sufficiently. But first let's see what the Alpha 1 is going to be used for. The Alpha 1 needs to be connected to a pair of speakers. It does not have a headphone output. To use the streaming functions, the Alpha 1 needs to be connected to your network. You will then have access to the internet and, if available, the music shared on your computer or NAS. All streaming functions are controlled using a smartphone or tablet. Some streaming software also offers control via a computer or laptop. If you connect a USB drive with music, the Alpha 1 can also function as a simple DLNA server. There are 3 analog and 6 digital inputs, so there are plenty of opportunities to connect external equipment such as a portable music player or CD player. The analog inputs are line level, so for use with a turntable, an RIAA preamplifier will need to be added. The third analog input has a processor pass-through function for using the Alpha 1 as left and right channel in a surround setup. In this case, the left and right preamplifier outputs of the surround receiver are connected to the coaxial analogs input 2 of the Alpha 1. This input is then set to bypass the volume control. The left, center, right and other surround channels, if present, are connected to the speaker terminals on the surround receiver. The subwoofer connects to the AV receiver's subwoofer output using an RCA cable. The Alpha 1's left and right channel now function as the power amplifier and speakers for the front left and right channels. The Alpha 1 has an aluminium front with a small dark acrylic section on the left side. The top and sides are made of thick metal and spray painted grey. At 450 mm it is 10 mm wider than most audio gear. It is 395 mm deep, 102 mm high and weighs 15.5 kilograms. On the front we see 6 seemingly unlabeled buttons. Their function is listed along the top edge of the front panel, which I think is a pretty neat solution. In most cases you will be looking down on the amplifier and will see the labels. On the right we find the standby button. The 2 LEDs to the left of it indicate the standby status. The bottom LED on means in standby, the top one off standby. Next come the volume up and down buttons. The middle of the 3 buttons further to the left opens the menu, while on either side are the up and down buttons. The menu is shown on the fluorescent display behind the top half of the acrylic screen. In normal use the input is displayed here, and when used as a streamer, information about the music is also displayed, and the volume setting is displayed. The connections on the back are well laid out and labeled. Let's start with the analog inputs. There is 1 balanced input on XLR and 2 unbalanced on RCA. This is number 1 and this is number 2. The latter can be set to bypass as described earlier. There is one balanced stereo preamp output on XLRs. Then the digital inputs, AES EBU and XLR, optical input 1 on Toslink, optical 2 on Toslink, a USB-A to connect a USB drive, the Ethernet connector on RJ45 plug, the USB-B connector to connect a computer, and a coaxial SPDIF input on RCA. Then we have the IC mains input with the power switch above it and next to it the speaker connections for the right and left. These are suitable for banana plugs, forks and bare wire. Inside we see a large toroidal transformer and a smaller one. It looks like the large transformer powers the power amplifier modules, while the smaller one is split up in two to power the analog electronics and digital electronics separately. USB I/O is taken care of by a Seed Studio module. The board below it does the analog inputs. Below that, the board that contains the digital electronics, including DSP, the volume control and pre-out buffering. I did not want to dismantle Alpha 1 completely, so I relied on the info of the manufacturer. The preamplifier is fully balanced and uses no coupling capacitors, so servo circuits outside the signal path make sure the signal remains as clean as possible. The volume control is done with a 64-step relay-based volume control. So while changing volume, you can hear the ticking of the relays. That might irritate at first. My Grim player uses the same type of volume control, but after a while it becomes an assuring sound that tells you your volume control is working. The power amplifiers are dual mono class AB modules running two pairs of bipolar transistors, screwed against the cooling profiles. They deliver 120 watts in 8 ohms, 200 watts in 4 ohms per channel and have a bandwidth of 200 kHz. B.audio does not specify what DAC chip, if any, they used. And as you know, I don't think it is that relevant to know. If power supply, filtering, circuit board design and digital receiver circuits are well designed, there's not much difference between DAC chips. B.audio has developed and patented their source jitter removal system and proprietary digital filtering algorithms. To quote B.audio, the B-DAC1 uses a linear phase digital filtering system that has been optimized to prevent pre-echo phenomenon and guarantees an optimal transient response. This oversampling process is embedded in a DSP that employs in-house developed algorithms. The AES EBU and SPDIF inputs support PCM up to 192 kHz 24 bits. The Toslink input supports PCM up to 96 kHz 24 bits. The USB-B input and streaming engine support 384 kHz PCM, DSD 128 over DOP and native DSD 256. The streamer can receive quite some protocols. UPnP MPD, squeeze light using the LMS protocol, Roon RAD, AirPlay, Spotify and HQ Player. All protocols can be active at the same time with the exception of HQ Player. If that is active, none of the other protocols can be active. Each protocol can be activated using the setting menu. There is a simple DNLA server that can index music on a connected USB drive. Please note that Spotify and Apple AirPlay are limited to 48 kHz. Spotify is always lossy compressed. Apple AirPlay can use lossy compression depending on the source. B.audio has not yet issued their own app. I understand one is under development. That's no problem though. There are many DNLA controller apps and Squeezebox controller apps, while Roon, Orivana, Tidal and Qobuz have their own app. B.audio calls it acoustic correction, which is a more appropriate name than room correction, since it's not the room that is corrected. The Alpha 1 offers DSP functions to do just that. To quote them, in-house developed, these features rely on a 64-bit architecture that eliminates rounding errors during various calculation steps. The overall gain is determined automatically without the need for user intervention, ensuring that no saturation occurs regardless of the parameters used. These specific characteristics enable the user to fully benefit from the correction of the listening environment while preserving signal quality. End of quote. Basically, it's a set of 8 parametric equalizers that can be set in the menu on the front display. The suggested way of working is that you measure the frequency response of your stereo at the listening position, or better, a number of positions around the listening position, calculate the average and set the filters to correct the problem. The manual suggests you use REW software with a calibrated USB measurement microphone like the Mini DSP UMIK. It can be done, but you need some insight and experience to do it right. Only work below 500 Hz. Try to attenuate problem frequencies moderately, like only a few dBs, and don't try to get a fully straight frequency curve. Rather go for a curve that slopes towards 20 kHz. Since my room doesn't need corrections, I have tried various slight corrections just to listen to the sound quality of the DSP. My tentative conclusion is that the DSP sounds very good for a DSP, but remember that the best DSP is no DSP. It is very nice that the DSP is there for when you really need it. Remote looks very nice, being made of machined aluminium. You expect the black acrylic part to be held on top. But as you can see here, the infrared transmitter is closest to the buttons, so this is the right way to hold the remote. The buttons outside the circle are for standby and for return when in menu. The buttons in the circle are the 4 cursor buttons and the OK button. And if you forget, their functions are printed on the back. The Alpha 1 was connected to the PMC FAC 12 signature loudspeakers on Stack Audio OVA 17 isolators using the AudioQuest Robinhood Zero loudspeaker cable. The network connection comes from the Zixel GS1900-10 HP switch. The connection to the Alpha 1 was over the Network Acoustics Muon Pro network filter and cable. From the Zixel there is a Cat6 patch cable to the Zixel Odido modem, which provides internet access via a Nokia media converter to the 1 gigabit per second up and down fiber internet connection. The small green computer Sonic transporter i7 CDR running Roon server, Minim server and Audivana core server is also connected to the Zixel switch via a patch cable. The remote app on the iPad Pro 2 controlled Minim server, Roon and Audivana. The equipment is placed in a Creative Trend 3-3 rack. The amp was placed on Stack Audio OVA equipment isolators. The first thing I noticed was the very good stereo image, wide and deep against a rather deep black background and with good focus. It offers rather high resolution in the mids and highs and good resolution in the lows. There was hardly any sign of jitter. There was only a slight reminder of sibilance. Poor sibilance is an indication of some form of jitter. That is why I almost always comment on sibilance. Apart from finding poor sibilance a nuisance, jitter can also influence the stereo image, black background, human voice reproduction and low frequency resolution. Here the patented SJR, source jitter removal technology, proves to be effective, especially in the mids and highs. I rate the Alpha 1 halfway my reference set of 1A. This was the first time with a B.audio product and it was a pleasant experience. Not that it is perfect. The characters on the display during the menu operations are too small to read from say 3 meters away. So to set the equalizer you have to leave your listening position. The grey paint on the cabinet is a kind of fingerprint magnet. And I had to activate the streamer in the Roon setup every time the Alpha 1 was set in standby. It does work with AirPlay and DNRA. It can even automatically switch to an analog input when a signal is detected. Small matters, I agree. What matters is the sound quality. 17,000 euros is a lot of money, but I challenge you to find a setup built from separate parts that comes even close. Realize that the integrated approach can transport the digital signal much more easily between streamer and DAC. You can't go wrong with cables. B.audio has customized the internal cabling. And you only need one remote control. If bless your counts is your adage, this might not be your product. But if count your blessings is your thing, and your budget allows for it, you might be blessed with a very enjoyable music experience when you add a good set of loudspeakers, speaker wire and a good streaming service. And that brings us to the end of this video. There will be a new video coming soon, so be sure to subscribe to this channel or follow me on Patreon, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram or TikTok to stay up to date on new videos. Patreon and YouTube Premium subscribers see my videos a week early and don't get ads. Help me reach even more people by giving this video a thumbs up or linking to this video on the social media. I would greatly appreciate it. A big thank to the viewers who support this channel financially. It keeps me independent and is a nice token of appreciation for my work. Just €1, pound, dollar or equivalent is greatly appreciated at a time when declining advertising revenues and a declining dollar are putting strain on my motivation. You can find links in the description below this video on YouTube. I'm Hans Beekhuizen, thank you for watching and see you on the next video. Whatever you do, enjoy the music.